that being gay and indeed being trans is without doubt a hardware issue. Because there was a realization that you get more sympathy for something if it's hardware.
Today, we're diving into what Douglas Murray thinks about gender, race, and identity in a very brief but informative video. Let's take a listen.
Well, the subtitle is Gender, Race, and Identity.
Basically, you're going to really annoy people with this.
Basically, what I discovered was that there's a set of issues which we can no longer think about. I mean, everyone says, we're not allowed to talk about this, but it's worse than that. We're not allowed to think about them. This primarily is everything to do, as I do them chapter by chapter in this book, everything to do with gay, everything to do with women, particularly relations between the sexes, everything to do with race, and everything to do with trans, which is the latest thing. Now, I think this is terrible for society.
Are we not allowed to talk about it because it's, as they would say, sorted?
That's one of the presumptions, and I've been trying to work out for a long time what discussion we do have on these things is so bad. Why, for instance, every time somebody nicks the tripwire, they die, they're destroyed, they're cancelled. And these are the things that cancel people most easily. But also why we were presuming certain things or landed on certain presumptions about things. So let me give you an example. We've been landing on this presumption that being gay and indeed being trans is without doubt a hardware issue. Because there was a realization that you get more sympathy for something if it's hardware. So if you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, and it's just because you like alcohol or drugs, if we can imagine such a person.
Can't imagine.
If they do it just because they like it, then that's a software thing, it's their choice, and we can be condemning of them. But if it's a hardware thing, they like have the alcoholic
no
gene,
way out of it.
Then it's hardware. Now the thing is that we've been agreeing in recent years because of this that being gay is hardware, and I say in the first chapter it probably is, or is in part, but it's not quite as certain as we're pretending.
Epigenetic.
We actually don't know very much about it still, and I explain why.
Well, there was a study recently, of course.
Exactly.
No gay gene,
in Science magazine.
But it could be a combination of nurture and nature.
Exactly. So, and that's really interesting because we never have any of that discussion. But the trans movement learned from the gay movement that you've got to make trans hardware. Particularly don't pretend it's got anything to do with sexual attraction or sexual desire or sex at all. Say it's hardware. And one of the things I realized when doing the chapter on trans was this was because it wasn't about trying to build a coalition. See, I lay out in really careful steps what I think is the plausible rights claim around this and where we go way off into the distance. Because the attempt is not to create a movement of agreement. The thing is to derange people and to use the trans as a battering ram to do something else. Now, what is the other else? What is the other else? Now, I think at this point it is brute politics. I give an example in each chapter of when you see the veil of this falling apart. So, Peter Thiel, a Silicon Valley tech billionaire, founder of PayPal, comes out in support of the Republican nominee for president in 2016. The main gay magazine in America immediately runs a piece denouncing the openly gay Peter Thiel and saying Peter Thiel may sleep with men, but in no way is he gay.
That's right.
Okay, Kanye West, prominent, undeniably black rapper, comes out for Donald Trump and is denounced in The Atlantic as no longer black. Germaine Greer fails the feminist test, and the most famous feminist of the late 20th century is denounced as no longer a feminist. Now,
and Candace Owens on the black.
Candace Owens. There's a whole set of the victims of this. So this keeps revealing it's about politics. It claims that being black is not about your skin color, and then it's just unimportant. It's about politics.
Attitudes.
Gay is about pulling down the patriarchy. Being a woman is not. It's not just you want equal rights. You're meant to destroy the capitalist order, and all of these things keep betraying this. And I think we have to understand this in order to pull it apart, stop it, and spend our time doing something better.
There's an insanity about it.
Absolute insanity.
Douglas Murray, thank you. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure.
Your book sells incredibly well.
I hope so, because it demoralizes my enemies.
It does, yes. It annoys all the right people. Thank you.
Douglas Murray begins by highlighting the central theme of his book, addressing societal issues that have become difficult to discuss openly. His previous work, The Strange Death of Europe, tackled controversial topics like Islam and migration, and in the madness of crowds, he delves into equally contentious issues such as gay rights, gender relations, race, and trans issues. Murray's approach is to dissect these topics chapter by chapter, aiming to foster a more open and honest dialogue. One of the significant challenges Murray identifies is the stifling of open debate due to societal presumptions. This phenomenon, often referred to as cancel culture, results in individuals being publicly shamed or ostracized for expressing unpopular opinions. A study by the Cato Institute in 2020 found that 62% of Americans say they have political views they are afraid to share, illustrating the widespread impact of this issue. Murray argues that this environment inhibits meaningful discussion and problem solving. In discussing the debate over whether being gay or trans is a hardware, innate issue, or a software choice issue, Murray emphasizes the complexity and uncertainty surrounding these claims. While the predominant view is that these identities are innate, Murray argues that the certainty with which this is asserted is often overstated. Scientific understanding of sexual orientation and gender identity is still evolving. For example, a 2019 study published in Science found that there is no single gay gene and that sexual orientation is influenced by a complex interplay of genetic and environmental factors. Murray also explores how the trans movement has learned from the gay rights movement by framing being trans as entirely a hardware issue. This strategy, according to Murray, helps garner sympathy and avoid uncomfortable discussions about sexual attraction or desire. This approach is often used to push broader political agendas. For instance, legislation like the Equality Act in the United States aims to expand civil rights protections, but also raises questions about balancing rights and freedoms among different groups. Murray provides several examples of how identity issues are manipulated for political purposes. He cites the case of Peter Thiel, a gay tech billionaire who was denounced by a gay magazine for supporting a Republican nominee. This incident highlights how political allegiance can overshadow identity. Similarly, Kanye West faced backlash and was criticized as no longer being black by some media outlets after expressing support for Donald Trump. These examples underscore Murray's argument that identity politics can be used to enforce ideological conformity rather than genuinely advocating for rights. Germaine Greer, a renowned feminist, was also denounced as no longer a feminist for failing contemporary feminist tests. This incident reflects the evolving and sometimes exclusionary nature of identity politics within movements. The shifting standards and internal conflicts within these movements can lead to fragmentation and diminish their effectiveness in advocating for meaningful change. Murray argues that these identity politics are not solely about rights, but are often tools for broader political aims, such as undermining societal structures like capitalism. He believes that movements centered around identity are sometimes co-opted to advance specific political agendas rather than focusing on genuine advocacy. This perspective is supported by historical examples where movements have been used to further political goals, sometimes at the expense of the original cause. In conclusion, Douglas Murray's conversation with Rod Liddle offers a critical examination of the complexities surrounding gender, race, and identity politics. By highlighting the challenges in discussing these topics openly, the manipulation of identity for political purposes, and the need for more nuanced understanding, Murray's arguments invite us to engage in more thoughtful and constructive dialogues. His insights are supported by historical context, contemporary examples, and empirical evidence, making a compelling case for reassessing how we approach these sensitive issues.